Welcome back, everybody, to the Upside of Authentic Leadership. I'm very excited today to have Chris Hodges. Chris spoke a few weeks ago to my Vistage group and did a great job speaking on artificial intelligence. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Chris. Chris is a graduate of the Naval Academy and the London Business School. And Chris has spent basically his entire career, starting with General Electric and then with Accenture and Delloitte, working with companies to implement technology. So he is perfectly suited to speak to this topic, and I'm really excited to have him here today. Welcome, Chris.
Well, Mickey, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Yeah. So first question, right? And we spent a lot of time during your presentation talking about this. In your career, implementing technology, what have you seen as the top reasons why an implementation works? And then on the flip side, what makes it crash and burn?
Yeah, the ultimate question, right? And I use a slide in the presentation that has been consistent for about 20 years. About 70% of all business transformations, including technology, fail to meet their goals. And that is an alarming thing. Think about, you're a small medium business and someone says, hey, you got a 70% chance of failure. Yikes. That's a little disturbing. So why is that? And I always ask people, hey, if, especially when it's a room full of CEOs or business leaders, right? They're sitting in the room and you say, what do you think is going to go wrong in this implementation, if anything? Is it going to be the technology that you implement? Is it going to be the processes that you work on? Or is it going to be something to do with people?
Mm-hmm.
People who have been around the block on this know the answer is people. That is what's going to go wrong. Now, don't get me wrong. Some technology can go wrong and there can be issues with processes, but it's what's a team, right? It's a team's a group of people. So what goes wrong if I go through those three things really fast? Yes, it's possible someone picked the wrong technology, or more likely didn't understand what the technology was or was not capable of doing. A classic example of this is a CRM like HubSpot, or an old school system was Siebel, today Salesforce. The sales pitch of what those things can do sounds like it's magic. And then when you go to implement it, it's not what you expected, right? It's too much work, or it's too much this or too much that. So that's a technology thing. Properly selecting and vetting the technology that it's going to suit your purpose, your company. And remember, every technology salesperson in the world wants to tell you their technology is perfect, right? And I mean, your incentive, right? So that would be one. Then the process is that what goes wrong, and then we're starting off negative, but I promise I'll end on a positive. What can go wrong so often on process is most businesses don't really know, the people themselves don't know what everybody else does. Even in small companies, they don't know what, if it's one person, that's different. But, if it's 20, 30, 40 people, whatever, most people don't know what the other people do. And so oftentimes people will try to implement something that only affects one little silo of the business. And of course, that silo it's not just one silo, it affects the other people as well. So in the process area, I was in GE, and even back to my days in active duty in the Navy, I was teaching total quality management in Japan, believe it or not, of all places. Then I became a black belt and a master black belt, and I led teams of people doing process improvement on this stuff all the time. And every time we would go to do a project, you would find out people didn't really know what the processes were. And so when you know what the processes are, it's pretty hard to, jump in and fix them, right? So understanding what the processes are, unbelievably important. And there are some really standard ways to do that make people's eyes open, my eyes included. And it's not genius to do this. It's just a good, solid process orientation. So understand the processes, right? What is actually happening? And of course, the last one, you sound like you're going to say something. You want to say something?
Well, when you talk, in my experience, many times when you bring all of the different people across the organization together to work on processes, it's the first time that's happened where they've actually sat down, or
exactly.
And wow, okay, that's what you do, and they really maybe don't have any idea what the person down the hall in the other department is doing with their data, or with their in the next phase, the next step.
Mickey, that's so true. So you and I have been in the same places, right? And
Right.
the classic thing is the sales guy, right? And I'm gonna use some gross stereotypes here, or extreme stereotypes. All those salespeople, they're just a bunch of fluffy, overdressed, worried about their hair, never have time. They won't spend any time with anyone. And that's what the operations people say about the salespeople, right? And then the salespeople say, "Oh, you operations people, you don't know anything about what it takes to really grow this business. Do you know without me, you wouldn't have any sales?" It's this crazy, friction between the two sides. But the truth is, both sides are unbelievably important. And it's hard to be a salesperson, and it's hard to be an operations person or a marketing person, right? Or even an HR person. So understanding what people do, getting to that level of understanding is so important. And I've told this story before, but my first big project when I had to do this, implement technology across a bunch of processes, we were merging three businesses together, three small businesses together. And you have to put them on one platform, which means everybody needs to first understand what they're currently doing and then figure out how to make something better out of all three. And
Right.
one of the guys we needed the most, he was this French entrepreneur who had energy, like he was on fire all the time. And he was a salesperson by nature. And I desperately needed him in the room, right? And I was pretty young at this point. I was like, 32 or something. And in order to get this guy in the room to make decisions, he would use his pager. This is back in the days of pagers. He'd use a pager to send a message to his phone, or his phone to send a message to his pager. And then he'd say, "Client call, I got to run." And he'd walk out of the room. But we needed what he had to say. So it got to a point where I took away his pager and his phone with a smile on my face, right? I'm like, his name was DJ, who's a great guy, by the way. But I said, "DJ, you got to give me your phone and your pager. And by the way, you need to stay here get through this."
All day, right.
It was to map it out, right? To really
Right.
see. And it's so much easier to make the changes when it's on the wall. It's post-it notes or it's whatever. It's just people get very engaged in that. But if you try to make changes and you don't understand what the processes are, it's a disaster. And you said it, Mickey. It's likely the first time they've ever done that.
Yeah.
Right? So what is
But there's also there's also a lot of upside potential in really expanding the horizons and really having a better understanding of how the business runs across the board. So it has a lot of upside there too.
Huge. And there's a skill set to doing that. There's a skill set to facilitating, to drawing that stuff out of people, getting it up on a wall. It's not rocket science, but it's a skill set. Right. It's not rocket science to do the salsa dancing either, but it's a skill set. And until you've been trained how to do salsa dancing, you're probably going to look pretty bad, right? So getting that's incredibly. So now we went through technology and process, and now the people part. So I recently came up with a phrase that I think it describes it to me. It's helping humans be heroes in the age of AI and automation. Because as Henry David Thoreau told us in the 1800s, most people live lives of quiet desperation. Think about that. Most people live lives of quiet desperation. So if you can find a heroic calling for these people, think of what they're trying to do. They're trying to overcome a dragon. That dragon is fear of technology, fear of change. So what I lay that out in the talks that I give. What does it really mean to take a hero's journey? What are the steps that people are going to go through? It starts with a call to adventure. Then there's fear, and there's assimilating to new things, and there's side journeys and distractions. Then there's this dragon, and all of that relates to implementing technology. So if you get the people part of this right, and the failure part is and I always say, as soon as you implement a technology project, everyone on that team is wondering, is my job getting better, worse, or staying the same? And worse could mean, am I going to lose my job, right? And every day you don't answer that question for a team member, they get more and more worried, and you get less and less of their wonderful human potential. So the biggest mistake is to underestimate the impact of what it's going to do to people and why they're resisting. Why are they fighting, kicking, and screaming? And when I say they, I'm one of them too. So are you. You and I are on the team. Yeah, we say the same thing. We're like, whoa, wait a minute. What's my future include here, right? So it's not like them and us. It's really, when you're the leader of a project, you know a lot about it, but everyone underneath you knows less. So those are all negatives.
And the real the name of the podcast, Upside of Authentic Leadership, being authentic, being real. Maybe I don't know the answer to your question, but when I do, we'll share that, and you'll know that. You don't have to worry that you're going to be operating in the in the dark and unsure of what the impact on you is going to be.
Right. And Mickey, the title, the authentic leadership, I couldn't be more supportive of that title and that idea. And what's a less nice way of saying authentic? You're not full of garbage. You're
Right.
real. You're
Yes. Right.
candid.
No
You're,
BS.
you're being honest, right? And that's what we all want. That's what, give me yeah, you're the leader, but be straight with me. Tell me what's going on and let's make this happen together. So when that's not happening, that's what it, and you could say these out of a textbook, right? You could go read some textbook on how to do technology. I have lived this for more than 30 years. And
Mhm.
that's the only benefit of being old, right? I have
Yeah.
seen so many things. And at some point, it's not your IQ, it's your pattern recognition. And you're like,
Right.
wait a minute, I've seen this go wrong before. Let's not do the same stupid thing, right?
Right.
So there's something to be said for, experiencing these things over and over again. But the positive side, and there's a great positive side to all this, right? So,
Mhm.
what do successful people do with this technology? First, they spend enough time learning what this technology is. And AI stuff is all really, really new. And there's a new tool every week, a new startup doing stuff. You don't need every single one, but somebody needs to go out there looking for those possible tools. And then, and this is really important, train the team, give the team an orientation. What can GPT actually do? What can Lindy.ai actually do? What can Canva actually do? I'm just listing off random tools, but these tools all do incredible things. But if a team doesn't know what the technology can do, then they can't come up with the best ideas. It's like
Right.
walking into Home Depot, right? You walk down the tool aisle in Home Depot and you're like, well, that looks cool. But what the heck does it do? Right? Well,
Right.
the minute somebody shows you what that thing does, it's a multi-axle sliding saw or whatever, you're like, oh my God, I could do my whole basement with that thing. The
Right.
point, so successful projects, the people spend some time up front explaining to people what this technology can do. And
The
then
problem.
the human brain starts to go, well, if I'd known that, well, I can do this and I can do that. And then it goes back and forth, right? My problem, what the technology can do. My problem with the technology, like a ping pong match, back and
Right.
forth, right? Or a handshake between the two. So successful teams do not rush into project implementation before they have the team understand a wide range of tools. And then narrow down on the technology to stuff that works. The teams that go get the newest cutting edge, bleeding, whatever, are almost guaranteed to fail, right? Get
Yeah.
stuff that works. And there's so much good AI stuff that works right now that solves
Mhm.
a problem, right? So an AI agentic robot, which is the bleeding edge, right? That stuff is going to be amazing when it's really mature. Right now, we got great stuff in ChatGPT and Perplexity and all the other things I listed. So that's the technology piece.
But just let me ask you one question on that. And
Dude,
you said you raised the question in the group to one of the members, or maybe several of the members. Why don't you know this? And so kind of explain if okay, I don't want to be on the bleeding edge, but I don't want to be the last guy in, which means I'm probably going to, my business is going to be out of business. And
right.
so how do you recommend they stay in that sweet spot
And
of
and you asked me that. I made that comment in the room. Why don't you know this? Yeah, you could say that in a lot of ways. You could say, "Hey, why don't you know this?" Kind of in a nice way, or you can say, "Hey, dummy, why don't you know this?" I don't mean that at all. What I'm saying
right,
is,
right,
if this technology is out there, and the stuff we were talking about initially in that call was robotic process automation, that's some great industrial scale automation that can be done in small businesses. I mean, it's industrial strength automation, but nobody in the room except one tech guy knew what RPA was. And
right.
that's like saying you don't know what AI is. Well, everyone can raise their hand and say they know what AI is, but why don't they know a little bit more?
Mhm.
Why are they not openly trying to embrace it? Are they kind of hiding from it? Is their team afraid to bring it up because is their team pushing back because they're worried about their job? So it's almost like the days when email or the web first came. And I remember people pushing back. on, oh, this
Mhm.
internet thing. Really? Look at that now. I mean, you look like an idiot if you don't embrace the internet, right? Well, that's
Right,
what
right.
AI is going to be. AI is going to be the same way. I mean, I would argue in many jobs it already is right now. So why don't you know that? Pause. What's the answer? And then once you get an answer, figure out what does it take to get over that, work through that.
Mhm.
It's probably a people issue, a fear thing. That's why I talk about the hero's journey. Because if you see AI as a call to adventure, like Luke Skywalker gets the call to adventure to go off and learn the Force and save the galaxy. If you see the introduction of AI as a call to adventure, then that can be exciting and you can do great things. But if you see AI as the end of your career, or something scary, or I'm going to be
Right.
dumb, you push back, right? So why don't you know it is a great question to ask. I'm glad you brought that up. And then the next question would be, what does it take to get to know it? And let's get going,
Right,
right?
right.
So I think I talked about technology.
Technology.
Yeah, process, I think we covered, knowing what the processes are. So I'll give you another short example. I got called in. A friend of mine ran the emergency room at Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C. Now, these are sick kids. These are kids with all kinds of problems, and some of them have cancer. It's very alarming. Pediatric emergency room. And he says, I got a big problem with blood. I can't get the blood test back. Can you help me? You're a process guy, right? I said, yeah, sure. So I sat down in the room with a patient. We're talking about a 6 or 7 year old kid, right? Walks in the door. And the first thing is the phlebotomist, the person who draws the blood, draws their blood, writes it on a label, puts a paper tag on it, writes out the paper tag, ties a string around it, and puts it onto a little stainless steel cart. Well, I sat there like a good process person, and this is what you have to do: is know what the process really is, walk the process. So all these blood samples stacked up on this tray, and only when the tray was completely full did they take the tray to the elevator to take it to the blood lab. So I followed the tray, right, like a good process person. So I follow the tray and I go up the elevator and it gets to the top. And when I get to the top, the first thing the person does when I get to the top of the elevator is he takes a pair of scissors and he cuts all the tags off and throws them in the trash. And I said, why did you cut? He says, I don't know why they put those tags on there. We don't need that. It's written on the vial. So how many years have they been wasting their time filling out these tags, right? And then when he starts taking the blood samples off, he picks the last ones, not the first ones. So whoever got their sample taken in the morning is waiting, another 4 hours because they put them off. So this is simple, simple stuff, right? And this is a building filled with doctors and nurses and clinicians. And so my point in all this is people who are successful with this stuff recognize and are humbled by the fact that they need to know what the processes are. Walk the process, see what happens, right? If it's on a computer, have somebody pull the screens up, go through that stuff. And everyone will finally say, I don't know why. Why do we do it that way? That's not a good way to do it. Let's do it this other way. And again, I'm not the genius, right? I can get them through that, but it's the person on the team that will more than likely will say, I can't believe we've been doing that. We need to
Right.
do something else. And
But it
then,
takes somebody walking through it. Yeah. And so why are we doing this? This doesn't seem to make sense or,
right. And then the final thing, of course, is people, which is great leaders, as you called them, authentic leaders. And authentic has a lot of branches to it, right? How are you an authentic leader? Do you hold people to incentives that make sense? Are you giving them incentives that are in conflict with what you're asking them to do? Are you
right.
organizing the team? There's sort of a 7 magic employee engagement, and we don't have time for that today, but there are these 7 really well measured out employee engagement tools. How are you doing on those? How are you involving people? Do they see their life as quiet desperation, or do they see their lives as a hero's journey? So those are my, in a podcast format, those are the things that I have seen go absolutely upside down, whoops, upside down, or the things, that have gone really, really well.
Well, it's probably a good idea to do some kind of survey before employee survey to see where are your employees? Are they down in the dumps? Maybe you need to do a little pre team building or something to really get them in a better
Absolutely.
place or something.
And,
So
and my
next,
favorite is you do the survey and then ask them to put their names on the survey. Bad
right.
idea.
No, don't do that. Anonymous surveys. And no
Totally
trying to
anonymous.
guess who said it.
Yeah.
And so you've been a visitor speaker for a while now, Chris. And so what are the sort of your main these are small to mid-sized businesses, so a little different than what you're, used to in your career working with large
Yeah.
Fortune 100, 200 corporations. What have you learned working with small and mid-sized businesses?
So I would say it's same and it's different and it's same. So different in that really big businesses are big, but very few projects that I ever worked on in either Accenture or Deloitte or GE. It's not the whole company, right? You're working, except that merging those three businesses, that was a pretty epic project. But you're working with a team and it's 4 or 5 people who are doing what they're doing. So there is a difference, and that is that small businesses have to be scrappy. They do not have time for a bunch of BS and wasted meetings and bureaucracy. Good news is the decision makers are usually pretty close. You can get the decision makers involved. So that's the beauty of a small business. The decision maker is not 4 layers removed. So I think it's you. What I have learned, you do not bureaucratize. I hated bureaucracy anyway. So you do not bureaucratize things. You don't overly structure things, right? You realize these people have probably spinning 3 plates at one time, especially the CEOs probably spinning 5 plates at one time. So it's focus the message, focus the actions to the imperatives, not the nice to haves, and not, it's how do we turn this thing around fast? How do we make this better than it's supposed to be? So scrappy, quick, don't focus on perfection. Those are some of
Right.
the things that I've learned working with small businesses. I love the fact that small, medium businesses can make decisions, but the challenge is most of the CEOs and the top leadership in the company, and that could just be 1 or 2 people, are totally swamped. They're
Well,
overwhelmed.
one of the ways I've seen AI show up in my members' businesses is through a vendor. They have a key vendor who has, hey, now we offer this, this, and so then they take advantage of their traditional vendors who are an architecture firm, and they use, I think, a very standard architecture drawing, the what do you call it, the where they make their drawings and everything, and so they kind of got caught up in it, and they have a person who's really connected with the vendor and goes to all the events and really follows any of their announcements, or they'd have the user group meetings and all of that help. Is that a valid way to do it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And two pieces what you just said. One, the most advanced vendors we work with and even customers are going to point us the way to things because they're going to say, "Hey, I'm using X, Y, and Z. Are you doing that?" And you go, "Oh, of course." You jump
Yeah.
on.
Go back. Hey, we need to get on this. We're not using it.
Oh yeah, and I think it's a good idea to say. I know it depends on the size of the company and the budget, but it's a good idea to send people to those the trade shows that are talking about all that stuff. There are all kinds of AI trade shows, an trade show on finance processes, an AI trade show on marketing. Just get somebody out there, and then when they get back, you tell them, when you get back, the day after you get off that plane, I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions, like, give me 10 things we can use in the business. Right? Don't let them
Right.
just go and enjoy the drinks and the enchiladas, right, at the trade show.
Right. Well, it's really what I hear you say, and I've always been an advocate of being outward facing. Don't just bury your head in the sand. I mean, in the past, maybe you could get away with that, but even, gosh, going back, what is it, 20 years for Blockbuster is probably the most famous example of a company that, completely missed the boat and disappeared. But
Yeah.
yeah, you really need to be in your team, especially the technology and operations team out there, really engaging with their colleagues out in the marketplace to hear what's going on, to not be surprised by, oh my God, why are we so far bidding so above the our
Right.
competitors?
Yeah, what's wrong with us? I mean, I think I it's scary. If you're a 20-year-old, it's one thing, but if you're, seasoned in your career down the road, it's so easy to try to resist and come up with all these excuses about why it doesn't work for you and blah blah. Just get over that fear. And I always say to people when I'm giving these talks, especially if they haven't used some of the more common tools like ChatGPT, go into ChatGPT. Don't tell me you just went in once or twice. Go into ChatGPT and ask it all kinds of crazy things. Upload some financials, some sanitized financials, and say, analyze this and tell me what the trends are. I mean, people are blown away by what comes out of that stuff. It is
Right.
incredible what you can do. So then that sort of lessens your fear a little bit. You go, hey, I just learned how to do that, right? I can do some more. And just know, every one of us should know, me included, none of us are going to be experts on all this stuff. Just like I'm not an expert on the internet, right? I mean, I know how to use the internet, of course. I use it every day of my life. But there's always stuff I don't know how to do. You just
Right.
need to know enough to move the ball forward.
Right. And create a culture within your company of let's be curiosity, asking good questions, openness to change, and really, to get away from that fear and, what is
Oh
happening,
yeah,
this.
the
Yeah.
ceremonial Wednesday pizza party on Bob because Bob came up with a great idea. And next week you go, Elaine, oh my God, Elaine just came up with this great thing in marketing. Like celebrate it, right? Celebrate, bring in donuts and say, these are, Jill's donuts for suggesting whatever, right? Anything it takes to get that culture. I think that's what you're saying. Very positive cultural movement. And that's what makes it work. And everybody should recognize it's okay. We don't all know this.
Right.
That's
Yeah, we
okay.
want to we want to teach each other, ask good questions, okay, well, let's figure that out. Let Bob, go spend some time with this vendor and, bring him in, and let's see what they
Totally.
got.
There's
Yeah.
another side of this, which is focusing on failure, which sounds like a horrible thing to say. There's an
Mhm.
award in Japan given to companies who fail something. And the award is basically the reason they put this award together is everyone in Japan at this point, this goes back about 30 years, but it's still going, where people were afraid to take chances because they were afraid to lose face and be embarrassed, right? So this company comes up with this award and says, no, I'm going to give out an award for failed attempts. Now, of course, he didn't want failure, but he wanted people to at least put something on the table and say, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried that, it didn't work. And of course, one of the stories I wrote in my book is a guy tried it year after year. He won the same award. And, because what he was doing didn't work. And then he finally hit it, and it fundamentally changed the trajectory of the company. But
Yeah.
he knew he didn't want to fail. Of course, he didn't want to fail. But the only thing worse than failing is not trying
Yeah, or quitting.
or quitting.
Yeah. One of
Quitting,
my favorite,
trying at
the
all.
Time man of the century, Winston Churchill, one of my favorite quotes from him is success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm.
Go Winston.
Yeah. And
He was
he,
a source of some pretty great quotes.
yeah, well, and he failed. And if you read his biography, he failed epically several times, but he kept learning and coming back, and
Yeah,
obviously it served him well when he was the man in the right time, right man, right moment,
right.
and literally say save the world is a quite a phrase, but he saved the world.
I think he was one of the top couple of people who saved the world. And think about if you're English, or British, yeah, he saved the world. And you're right, he has a history of just some epic screw ups when he was young, but the tenacity to keep going forward, and that's what we all need to do.
Yeah, well, Chris, it's been great, a lot of fun actually spending this time with you. I appreciate you taking the time to speak to my followers, and look forward to staying in touch and maybe bringing you back when in the near future as things continue to develop. So,
I love it,
have a,
Mickey. Thanks for an authentic conversation about
all right,
authentic leadership.
awesome.